Kia ora, this program is brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Wellington Access Radio, make your voice heard.
Hi, and you're back with the Blackhouse on 106.1 FM. I'm here with Just Sounds on the tech deck. It's just the two of us today. And we've also got a special guest in the house. But before I introduce that, I'd just like to say it's been a really busy week in the Wellington African community. And if it's bubbling underway to revamp the African Community Councils of Wellington, so hopefully be more resilient with community support. I think that's a really important thing to happen in Wellington. And also, you know, our condolences are being sent out to the Mahaua and Saziba family for sad loss of their father, and, you know, who was laid to rest yesterday, with many of the African community in attendance. So our thoughts are with my co-host Pader and her family at this moment. But anyway, we're going to get on to our first guest, and our guest today is a storyteller, an actor, and a poet. He arrived in Wellington, or in New Zealand, in 1989, and I'd love to welcome right now Tony Hopkins to the Blackhouse. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing quite well, really. It's good to be here.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'd just like to start with you giving a kind of a brief introduction of yourself. I usually say, you know, tell us your Genesis story, but, you know, you can frame it whatever way you like, Tony.
Yeah. Like I used to introduce myself at Te Papa when I did tours, is that I'm originally from Washington, and I now live in Wellington. From wash to well, and I love it. Yeah. But the actor, the poet, and the storyteller, all that came later as an understanding of the recognition of it, who and what I was. I didn't realize that's what I was growing up in America. I was whatever I could make money with, and I didn't take it on. Quite often when I was applying for jobs or filling out forms that asked what your profession was, I had no idea what to put. The first time I put actor, I got a buzz all over my body.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the first time I was auditioning for a professional opera in Amsterdam.
Right, okay.
And another black guy from the States asked me what the Dutch word for profession was, and it was oproep. And I told him, oh, that's profession. And he immediately wrote actor. And I saw that, and I just thought, oh, okay. So I wrote it right quick as well. Yeah. But it was an outright lie as far as I was concerned. But, of course, I needed to do something like that. But the sensation in my body was so incredible. It was like I had discovered a truth about myself that I had not known.
Right.
Because, of course, growing up on the streets, you have to act a character.
Yep.
All the things I learned on the street, it actually programmed me to get into acting quite easily at first. Of course, when I had to start being all the other different characters, it was the other jobs, the other actors, the different workshops, and all the different other ways of studying to be for theater. I was able to develop more. But it was like, we all are actors, just like Shakespeare say, you know.
Yeah.
We're all just players. all on the stage.
That's saying life's a stage.
That's it.
And we're all actors in it.
He likes the word players.
Players.
Yeah, and that's the trick word for the streets. All the guys and the hustlers and the girls, they call themselves players.
Right. Yeah. But with that meaning, or what do you think?
The name of the game is life.
Yeah.
If you don't want to put up the stakes, don't play the game. So we play.
Yeah. So, okay, you said you came from Washington, D.C., and you moved...
At first to San Francisco. Well, first I went to the Air Force, ended up in Texas.
Oh, okay, right. So that would have been really different.
Extremely different.
Because Washington, D.C., I've heard it's been called Chocolate City.
That's news to me.
Really?
But I can accept it because of what I say in one of my stories is that... growing up in the 50s in Washington, D.C., of course, we were Negroes then, and we didn't really have a heck of a lot going for ourselves, but we were the largest number of people there.
Yeah.
So they kind of left us alone.
Yeah.
So, this idea of having to sit on the back of the bus, well, kids, we loved sitting on the back of the bus. We didn't have to, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was so different. I got to Texas and... Yeah, it was like, oh, goodness, yeah, right. Even some of the black people there that were civilians would talk about the person they worked for as their boss man, which threw me. I don't have a boss man.
Right. Because was that the difference from living in the North as compared to the South? Is that...
in a sense, yes, because like people in New York considered people in Washington, D.C., is jive Merlin farmers.
Right, okay.
So we were south. Right. We were actually below the Mason-Dixon line.
Right, yeah,
that was south. But of course we didn't think we were south because people from Georgia and Alabama, they were south as far as we're concerned.
Right, okay, so the further south you go, the more southern you are.
Supposedly.
Right, okay. Yeah.
I didn't even realize that I had a slight southern accent compared to New York, yes, but compared to Texas and Alabama and all, no.
Right, okay.
It was, one of the crazy things about being black was a terrible thing to be in the 50s. And if you were dark skinned, it was like very negative. Yeah. So if you were lighter skinned and you called somebody black, you might have to fight. And we even had a nursery rhyme as kids. If you're white, you're all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back.
Right. And
I was actually brown, but I didn't realize it so much. Because we were all shades in my family. I have a brother very dark. I have my sister that was very light.
Yeah.
My grandmother even looked like she was white. But so I didn't really take all that on.
So it's kind of like internalized colorism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in one of my stories I explained, because on the slaves, on this plantation, it was like the dark ones were out in the fields. They were the field ends, you know, the N word.
Yeah.
And then there were ones in the house, and they were a bit lighter. They were browner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were the house N word.
Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, it was assumed because they was out in the sun all day, that's why they were darker. But the lighter skinned ones were lighter skinned because their father was either the master or one of the master's sons. And that gave them certain more privilege. That's why if you were brown, you could stick around.
Right. So, go a bit. Tell me a little bit more about, the black identity versus African-American, because I'm really interested in your take on that, because we've chatted about it before, but I'd like you to sort of tell our listeners about the difference between the two, or why some people are prefer to be called black, because I do have a lot of friends of your generation that don't call themselves African American, they call themselves Black American. Yeah. But I don't think a lot of people out there actually understand why. I can't speak for anybody else but myself, but personally, because like I said, if you call somebody black in the 50s, you might have to fight. But if you didn't call somebody black in the 60s, later 60s, after the so-called Black Revolution, I'm black and I'm proud, black is beautiful. We need to teach our children that they're young, gifted, and black. So we were making the word black a positive rather than a negative. So that's why it was important to me to be a black man. So when I got to San Francisco, I had some experiences that changed my mind. I didn't hate white people. I actually met white people that didn't. It was like they didn't see me as less than them. They saw me as an equal and treated me as an equal. Changed my mind.
So, but I did like the idea that I was a black man and not a Negro anymore.
Yeah.
So then I packed my bags in 1976, flew off a one-way trip to Europe.
Yeah.
And sometime after some years living there, I get the word that they call themselves African-American.
Right, well, so you're in Europe when you hear this.
Yes, that's when they decided. And I do admit now more than I did back then, if I was still living in America when that happened, I quite possibly would call myself African-American because of the influence.
Yeah.
But because I lived with Africans in Greece, I had met people that were of Africa, that were from Africa, but people speak of Africa like it's a country. And there are so many countries in Africa that's like,
it's a continent.
And they're all in all the shades, and it's like, it's incredible. It's not a country. So I couldn't think of it. That's why I wrote that particular poem about a problem of identity. Yeah, because I had to define it for myself, because I didn't want to put people down because they want to call themselves that. Yeah, that is something I feel we all individuals have the right to give ourselves a label. Yeah, as growing up being a Negro, we didn't give ourselves that label.
No, it was given, and I understand that because I was given labels, and I now label. I use my own labels today, and that's more empowering than like I used to. That was one thing I hated about growing up here, was being given labels and being told what you are as opposed to how you are, how I see myself. Yeah.
And it was because, like, I grew up in the church. In the Catholic Church, in the Mass, we use Latin. But I understand they definitely don't use it anymore now. Yeah. But Negro was for the word black. Yeah. So let's throw out the hiding the fact of it and make it more of a positive thing, being black. Yeah. But then I discovered we had an idea when we were kids that there was some Native American in us. Yeah. But as I say in one of my stories, but back then it wasn't the plus.
Right. What do you mean by that?
Well, you was already down under if you was a Negro, but if you was Native American, which they called Indian, then you was even less.
Right. Because that was one of the weird things I always think about America is the almost the invisibility of American Indian, and even almost the complete obliteration of those black Indian people or black indigenous people of America. When I first learned about that, I went through a period of cognitive dissonance about it. Like everything I'd grown up with watching on television or hearing in the media, when they spoke about Indian, there was a particular look. That was what we understood to be Indian from America. And then I started reading on social media more about this black indigenous movement that was going on, and speaking and talking to people who were black but identified as indigenous American. And that was like blowing my mind, because I mean, there's those obvious signs, in Mexico and places with statues with the faces and all that clearly look like African heads, or, they had African black features. But I hadn't thought about it in terms of indigeneity in the Americas, because they literally separate. Like, what's your take on all of that? Like, especially with your background what you understand about it being Cherokee.
Yeah, when I first started doing it, I was a bit embarrassed because I knew those Cherokee words. I didn't really know anything about that tribe or anything. Yeah. So I did start doing some investigation. I found out like OCO, that's like hello, and Tony Dawado. My name is Tony. I learned that to use in one of the introductions to one of our storytelling things that me and my partner would do, which I don't use anymore, because she did Irish, Maori, I did Swahili and Cherokee.
Right.
Introduction of hello. I can't even remember the Swahili now. I'm going back like 15 years.
And Jambo.
I think so.
Yeah, that's hello. Or habari.
Jumbo, I think.
Yeah.
Because and that's how we introduced. We would start off with the children sitting down, and we would say those words to the children.
Yeah.
To let them know we're going to tell stories from each one of these particular.
Different groups,
Yeah, from that particular group.
And so you had to learn Cherokee?
Yeah, but that's what I meant. That was all I learned.
Yeah. Because Cherokee, I understand Cherokee's like a nation, so there's a lot of different tribes.
Yeah, one of the things is that it's like they've hidden these things. Like Ethiopia was an entire empire before Europe came.
Right.
Yeah, but of course they never taught anybody that. They didn't want people to think that people from Africa could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were highly intelligent. The Muslims, they were actually more qualified to be considered. What's the word they use when it's not savage, but
cultured.
Yeah, cultures like we were savages. They had no cultures. Well, that whole thing about crusades when they came to take over the Muslims were actually a hell of a lot more sophisticated than they were. I mean, these guys wouldn't even bathe that well. I mean, they had terrible habits that we know are terrible for health now, But the Muslims, they took care of themselves. They were clean and stuff like that. Yeah, but they didn't. They hid all that fact.
Yeah, they introduced. I think there was a lot of scientific contributions that Muslims made.
Yes, yeah.
Or the Islamic Empire made to the world.
Our numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Mathematics, for one.
It's how we count money.
So coming down to New Zealand, so there's that whole area of identity and coming down to New Zealand from Europe. Was there any culture shock moving from Washington DC to Europe?
Yes, it was funny because by the time I left the States, I still called myself a black man, but because this idea of being part of the movement, I changed my mind a great deal because it was so much. It's like they always talk about your leader when it's not white.
Yeah.
And Malcolm was not my leader, but I liked some of the things he said.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King was not my leader, but I liked some of the things he said.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a leader. But too often the problem because of the Black Revolution, because of the things that were happening, they got so disorganized, you couldn't trust even some black people by then.
Yeah.
What's his name? Stokely Carmichael. He was doing some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
But then the word hit the streets that he was actually a CIA agent.
Oh, okay.
If it was true or not true, it didn't matter. It's just that hint.
Yeah.
And then of course you found out that there were a lot of so-called black leaders. They didn't give a damn about black folks.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be leaders. They just wanted to be in charge. They wanted to be in control. So I didn't know who to trust.
Were you, because you were there when the Black Panther movement was happening. I'm a huge fan of the Black Panthers, actually.
They were incredible. The problem for the Panthers was that people described them and made them look like they were a gang.
Yeah,
and they were not. They were a political party.
Yeah,
which is a total difference.
Yeah.
The problem was that they went into the black areas and told white folks, just leave us alone. We'll take care of ourselves. Yeah. They organized food. They organized schools. They organized things for the community.
And they were very well educated too. They were students.
Yeah. But the problem was that, oh boy, it scared the hell out of white folks.
Yeah, at that time. I mean, that whole assault.
And of course, some of the guys had been to prison, so yeah.
And there was that just recently, the assault on the Capitol, and the first thing I was thinking of was the Black Panthers.
If they were black, they'd have been killed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that had blew them away.
Yeah, because they did the same. The Black Panthers actually did that. They walked in with the guns, right, for the open carry.
Because they legally could walk with guns.
Yeah.
Now white folks are doing that.
Yeah.
And they don't do that. They don't stop them.
Yeah. And if black people were to do that today, what happened on the 6th? Was it the 6th of January?
Yeah, 6th of January, they went into the Capitol building.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of dead folk there.
Yeah. But so it is. It gets quite complicated on that. I forgot my train of thought now.
That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to go to a music break, and we'll come back to it. We'll pick up the train of thought when we come back. Our first song today is from a Ghanaian Australian artist who embraces the weird both in himself and his music. You'll hear him blending jazz with hip hop in a style that he likes to call 21st century punk jazz. His name's Genesis Owusu, and this is his song "Don't Need You."
Once I left your crazy ass, I took a therapy session. I won't be richest with the wealth, I'll be the richest in blessings. I said, you made a bet today, said I can't leave my bed today. You tapped me on my chest today, wanna rear your head on a bed today. Black dog, you be barking. I always saw your ass as a hindrance, and you saw me as a target, but wait, could this be true? I don't need you. I don't need you. Wait, this is true. I don't like you. I don't like you. Can't you see I'm rich? Same chicks, how'd you do it like that? Running off of my back. Same chicks, ain't shit. How'd you do it like that? Running off of my back. Ain't shit. Could this be true? I don't need you. I don't need you. Wait, could this be true? I don't like you. I don't like you. I said your ass is stinky and you built like a mole. And I'll put your ass to London if you can't take a stroll. I feel better. I'll be awesome when you stop chugging on my dome. Goddamn, I said, wait, could this be true? I don't need you. I don't need you. Goddamn, wait, this is true. I don't like you. I don't like you. Just wait in the hallway, babe. I don't like the smell of broom. Can't you see I'm rich? Same trick, how'd you do it like that? Running off of my back. Same tricks, ain't shit. How'd you do it like that? Running off of my back. Ain't shit. Could this be true? I don't need you. I don't need you. Wait, could this be true? I don't like you. I don't like you. Could this be true? I don't need you.
You're back on air with the Blackhouse on 106.1 FM, and I'm here with Tony Hopkins. Now, before we went into the break, we were talking about the Black Panther Party, and you were around in those days with the Black Panthers. I first started learning about the Black Panthers at uni in depth, but I do remember, because I was brought up on a hippie commune for a short period of time with my mother. It took me from my grandma's, right? And I do remember seeing their magazine lying around the commune called Panther Speaks. So I was already familiar with the picture of the panther. I'd seen it as a child, like I probably would have been about 6. But you were actually in America when the Black Panthers were a happening thing. Mm-hmm. Yes. What was your and they were very it was Stokely Carmichael was it Stokely Carmichael that actually coined the word black is beautiful? Was that him?
It's one of those things to where is that I don't think so, but yeah, it's complicated because many phrases that we use now that are actually said that this person said it. I've gone back and checked that it's possibly that person got it from another person, but they're the first one to say it in a particular situation. So everybody said they said it.
Yeah.
Like I got that problem with some things I say. People think they're mines, but it's not mines. But
because I know there was Black Power and Black is Beautiful. And
teach our children that they're young, gifted, and black. It's Nina Simone that made the song. Now I don't know if she created that phrase or not. I don't know anymore. And it got to the point where I didn't care. It didn't matter. It was that so many things happened and so many people was able to express their ways by using those terms. But but Stokely wasn't really. Now it gets very complicated because he was more. It was Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver. I think because it's all these people were actually were doing
Angela
things.
Davis.
Yeah, Angela Davis, and Angela Davis wasn't Black Panther.
She wasn't.
No, because it's interesting. She actually came here. I got to see her. But she was actually a communist, which was like the worst thing to be in America.
Oh, right.
But they couldn't mess with her too much because she was also a professor. She was highly educated, as I say.
She's still teaching today.
Because they made that big thing about her because of Jonathan Jackson and George Jackson.
Right,
and they weren't Panthers. So that's why it's complicated because they had
Jonathan Jackson,
SNCC or SNCC, I think they call it. So they had all these different things going on. I mean, to where and it was always that NAACP, which was created long before that. So they were all they were kind of like doing different things, but it was extremely complicated because Malcolm wasn't Black Panther. But Black Panthers actually came out of what Malcolm had kind of started. The idea to start the Black Panthers. But it's really complicated to say which one these phrases really came. But they became important because they were, like I said before, the whole idea of the black being negative, they wanted to change that and turn it on its head and make it a positive thing about being black.
And the really strange thing, because how you were saying before about you identified as black rather than African American, and I kind of understand it, but in a different way. And it was because I identify as black. I don't identify as brown, but I identify as black more because my heritage comes from Africa. It's a black root. That's the way I look at it. And also probably in the 90s, Pacific Islanders and Māoris really claimed that brown identity. So, and I was never Māori or Pacific Islander. I mean, I can't, I might look kind of like them, but it doesn't make me one of them, right? And the other thing that I found really interesting was that a lot of the people in those top areas, like Kathleen Cleaver, even though Angela Davis was there, but she was with SNCC, Huey P. Newton, these were actually light-skinned folk. They weren't dark. They weren't. They would be my colour, actually, but they identified as black.
That was the real problem. One of the things, and it was neatly put in one of those books back then. They couldn't be published in America. The Spook Who Sat by the Door. I can't remember who wrote it, but he couldn't get it published in America. He had to take it to England, and a British woman and guy, they published it for him. Right. It started making money in Europe, so someone in America, they decided to publish it in America. The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Spook was one of those put-down words for black people.
Right.
They had to get somebody in the CIA that was black so that they, a token black person.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do you think...
But when you were doing this whole thing was, if you weren't that black, you had to prove it.
Right.
You had to act like you were blacker than everybody else. The lighter skinned you were, the more you had to prove it.
Yeah. Isn't that a weird...
When you were black, you didn't have to do anything because you were black.
And so you don't have to prove anything to anyone. But
if when you're lighter skinned,
and I think that's still something that runs through a whole lot of different society, a whole lot of different ethnic groups at the same time. I often find African kids that have been born and brought up here in New Zealand, or they spent more of their life here than overseas. Like, it's almost like there's an overcompensation going on. Instead of just an acceptance of this is who I am. I'm this whether you like it or not.
Yeah. You
know,
have to prove it.
You don't have to prove it.
But we had to prove it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that kind of turned me away because, like, I've never needed a leader.
Yeah.
And I never even considered being a follower.
Yeah.
So so I don't want to be bothered. I walk my own path. I am who I am, without this belonging to a group.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Superfly.
Yeah.
The film. I think his name was Priest in it, where he was challenged. He was a dope dealer.
Yeah.
And he was challenged by a black group about, fighting for black people and everything. Well, he told me, look, when you're ready, I'll be right there in front with everybody else when we're having that revolution going on. In the meantime, F off.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Because it's like, I'm supposed to now want to fight for black people. And it's like, where do I start? Well, every time one of us stand up and actually act like we want to do something for black people, what does the white man do to them?
Yeah.
They became an enemy. I mean, Cleaver, Angela Davis, Stokely Carmichael, Hugh P. Newton, all these people. H. Rap Brown. Most people they don't even remember much about him. He disappeared in prison.
He actually, just recently, a story of H. Rap Brown actually popped up on my Facebook page.
Okay. Because I didn't think he was alive anymore.
Yeah, apparently he's still alive.
Yeah, because he disappeared in prison.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you disappear in prison?
Because of the system there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of the things that got me out of America was I knew eventually I would not be able to get out.
Yeah.
I was able to get a passport because I had not been convicted of a felony.
Okay.
That's when I got out. As soon as I got a passport, I skipped the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's it. Once they get you hooked, boom, that's it.
You're locked in.
Yeah. If they pick you up for anything and you've been picked up before, you're a criminal. I
better correct myself. I did see the story on H. Rap Brown. There was a current picture there. I don't know if he's alive or dead. I didn't read. I'm like, okay, I thought that guy was dead.
I only assumed it because he did. He disappeared. Right. And the last I heard, he was in prison.
Okay.
And I never heard any more.
I know that there's a couple in Tanzania. They're the what's their surname? They run a community center for youth up in Arusha in Tanzania.
Okay.
And it's Pete O'Neill and Charlotte O'Neill, Mama C, and they run. The community center is the United African Community Center, something like that. Yeah, but they've got a Facebook page. But Mama C does poetry like yourself, and she plays them. It's like that small kind of guitar thing that's got a round bass.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it.
Yeah, and it sort of sits like that, and she strings it. Yeah. And also she travels back and forth from America, but Pete can't go back. And they were in the Kansas City chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've got really they've got a really nice video on YouTube and really iconic pictures of Charlotte and Pete together with the the rifle that was the all important icon in the 60s. Yeah. With the Black Panthers.
Yeah, and this is why, because I knew one of the things that happened to me in different times was I was considered someone that was intelligent. And so I was approached by different groups at different times to try to help me to help them out, to join them and stuff like that. And I started making people not okay with where I was going, because I wasn't going to be working for the white man. Yeah. But I wasn't going to be working for just any black person, because a lot of them, they were just for themselves. It was like this whole idea, like, they always think all black people are all for all black people. Yeah. No, there's a lot of black people that are just for themselves, just like anybody else. Yeah. It's like I like to say, white people do not have a monopoly on stupidity.
Right.
Yeah, because you'll find it. You
find it everywhere.
Yeah. So this idea, us black folks, we're going to do this and we're going to do that.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work, but you got to know, if you're part of a particular organization, you got to really know what's really going on. What are they really doing?
Yeah, and what's the agendas?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you brought that thing up, because some young activists were talking to me yesterday, a young gentleman, and he was actually saying, what do you do about these kind of situations? And I said, well, what other people who have worked in activism have you spoken to? And you've got to learn learn from other people that have been doing maybe the similar thing, or something along the lines of kind of activism or whatever, because you can't trust that everybody will have the same agenda as you, or they want the same outcome. Yeah.
Because when King was killed, I was working for the post office in Washington, D.C., and they let us all go that day, the next day, because he was killed the night before. And I was with the guy that had been in the riots in Detroit, and I had never been in the riots. We didn't have them there. And so we hit the street. And I was like, okay, now what, We're going to riot or what, And this white man, this old white man with the cane, with the crutch was walking past us. Well, he kicked the crutch out from under the eye. And at that moment I thought, wait, whoa.
Yeah, what are you doing?
This is an old white man. I'm going to harm him because they killed King?
Yeah.
This just didn't click.
And it wasn't that the police that had something to do with his death? Like, it would have been the system, the government, and all the rest of it.
It's the same for both Kennedys. I mean, even Malcolm, the two guys that killed him, they did a few years in jail and they went back on the street.
Yeah.
But they didn't even bother too much with it because they were blacks. They killed a black.
Yeah.
But they had to do something when there was a white killing a black.
Yeah.
Because that created problems. But so there's all kinds of conspiracy theories behind them, and still to this day.
Yeah, I found that just going through, I was completely addicted, but to the Black Panther story when I was at university, and really got into learning about what they were all about. And I knew that Malcolm X had influenced the creation of the Black Panthers.
Yeah, he actually wasn't trying to create that. It's just that because of what he did, and because when he split from the Nation of Islam, because even Malcolm went to Mecca and saw white Muslims, blue-eyed Muslims.
Yeah, so he was blown away.
Wow, So one of the crazy things, and it's been written several times, because Malcolm and Martin never really got together because they was polar opposites. As far as publicity went. Yeah. But toward the end, toward both of them's end, they started coming closer. Yeah. Malcolm stopped being this outrageous, ready to kill white folks. Yeah. And Martin's got tired of all this peaceful marching.
And got more sort of we need to do something about this.
And then they both died. Yeah. Yeah, but it's it's one of those complicated things that this is why I've always been my own person. I grew up a Catholic. I just had to let that go because they couldn't convince me anything. It was the first people that did me wrong, that treated me unfair, were the nuns.
Right. Nuns. Oh, my gosh. I went to Catholic school.
And the brothers and the priests. I mean, they mistreated me. I got kicked out of grade school. I got kicked out of high school.
Catholic nuns love rulers, and they love coming along. If you're not doing your writing properly, slap over the fingers with their rulers. Oh, my gosh. I don't think they're allowed to do that now, but
I don't think so. But
there's a lot of things the Catholic Church should be allowed to do.
So by the time I got to Europe, the whole idea was this: I was a black man, but I wasn't for the whole black movement thing. It's like my people. Nina said it so beautiful. I know who my people are, and they're not all black. Yeah. And it's a reality. It's one of the things that I had to go along with and understand. Yes. Black people in America had to be angry. They had to get that anger out. They had to get through it, and then understand. Okay, yes, because the anger isn't going to take you a hell of a lot of places. You got to somehow start seeing the humanity in other human beings. The ones that are doing these bad things. Yes, depending on what's happening, where you are, and what's going on, you have to deal with that. But you can't go on your entire life in anger. because that just destroys you. And you have to like I tell people, you got to take care for yourself. And like RuPaul says, how the hell are you gonna love anybody if you don't love yourself? Yeah, but with the anger, you don't even like yourself. You just anger. You just anger. Everything comes out anger. So you have to get through that. And I got through that. I wasn't angry anymore. So when I got to Europe, I didn't give a damn about black, purple, green, or anything when it came to people. I just, because I didn't meet, the only people, the color I meet, they were from different parts of Africa. Right. And they didn't like different parts of people in Africa that were black.
Oh, yeah, there's enough stuff going on amongst Africans hating one another.
I had to stop a Kenyan and a Sudanese from fighting in front of all these Greeks. I said, look, man, you're screwing us up, man. The Greeks are just sitting there watching this as entertainment. Y'all want to kill each other.
Yeah.
Of course they didn't listen to me because they had a history of not liking each other.
Right.
So I just gave up on that idea of being a black. I'm a black man. I always said so. Yeah. But I didn't go off being part of any movement anymore. I was Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
And then that was it. Yeah. So
when you came with all that experience from the States to Europe, you finally get to New Zealand and it's 1989. I was here in 1989. Well, what did you see when you got here in 1989?
Well, it was Auckland, and I didn't see that many Maori or any Pacific Islanders. I was only there a month, and my wife at that time, she was in New Zealand, the Pākehā. So, of course, we didn't hang out with Maori, so I didn't know anything. But when we came to Wellington, all that changed. Yeah. And I started working at the PPTA. Yeah. And things were changing over, and I was a receptionist and had to answer the phone and asked me, would you say kia ora? I said, well, I'm not sure if I pronounce it right. So they said, well, try it. I said, kia ora. They said, oh, yeah, that's okay. So I would answer the phone with kia ora. So I started learning more from the Maori Tikanga stuff. But one day, because I didn't know, they called them bottle shops.
Right.
I'm a drinker. I was even a big drinker then.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find a liquor store.
Right. You're looking for a liquor store.
Yeah,
we don't call them a liquor store.
I mean, there's several liquor stores right in front of me, and I didn't know they were.
Yeah.
So I finally found one on the corner of, at that time, it was the corner of like Courtney and Cambridge.
Okay, yeah.
Right across from the Embassy Theater. Yeah. And so I became my bottle store. That became the place I went and bought my alcohol. Yeah. Well, I got to know the guy that was behind the counter. We got to talking. He was Pākehā, but I didn't even know how to say that word then. Yeah. But one day we were talking, and it was a group, and to this day, because I still could not make that distinction, I don't know if it was a group of Maori guys or Samoan, but Pacific Island, I have no idea now. But he said, look at all those Maoris over there. And it really shocked me. I thought, doesn't he see what color I am?
Yeah, No, I get
but
you.
I had an American accent that made me something more
else
than those Maori over there.
Yeah, and that's it's really strange how I saw the same thing happening when I was in Australia too.
Yeah.
You know, like there was this colloquial racism that was really like in Perth, because Perth is like the deep south. Yeah. So
I've been there.
Yeah. So you had this colloquial, localized racism that was extremely polarized between white and Indigenous Australians. Yeah. And if you were also the same color and appearance even, because I often got mistaken for Noongar, which is the local people from Perth, because a lot of them actually look like me.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's because there's so much mixed race and what have you. Yeah. Further north you go, the darker they get. Yeah. So there's this, as soon as I opened my mouth, it was like you said, suddenly I wasn't one of them. I'd be Indigenous Australian up to a point. Yeah. And that was even with other Indigenous Australian. Often they'd mistake me for being Indigenous Australian. And then after that, it's like, the Pākehā people would express their racism towards Indigenous Australian to me like I'm going to take their side.
I know.
And I'm like, What is wrong with your brain? When I look in the mirror, I see a person of color. I see, I identify as a black woman. So, I see a black woman. Like a lot of Indigenous Australians, they don't identify as being brown. They identify as being black.
Yeah.
So, and because their root is black, I guess. So, and also they've got quite a lot of affinity with the black movement in America as well.
Yeah. Me personally is that I use the term black basically as an identity, like that poem I got there. Yeah, because it's like, for instance, it's not about color.
No.
It's about an identity.
Yes.
Because we were called Negro, which is Latin for black, and it was negative. We turned it on its head and made it a positive thing. So therefore, I am a black man.
Yeah.
To making it positive. Yeah. So it's this whole thing about people say, "Oh yeah, but you're not black." Like in the story that we created, our partner Maura, she plays this French, like she's French because I'm in Europe. When I start trying to explain that, I'm Latin American, I'm a black man, I didn't, and the woman says, "But Tony, you're not black. You're brown."
I know a lot of people.
Wait a minute. No, I don't mean. I'm not talking about color. I'm talking about identity.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, like because one of the things that I know about, like growing up here, my mum and the man she married, unfortunately, she married a guy. Yeah. So I was always told that I was Negro.
Yeah.
I was always told that if I was to move to any other country, that would be my identity. And so in the 70s, I think, you weren't here in the 70s, but in the 70s we had a lot of sitcoms, Black American sitcoms, African-American sitcoms, like That's My Mama, Good Times, all of that. We had a lot more than we actually have today.
Yeah.
And, Nurse, there was a whole lot of them. And I would run home from school at the end of, at 3 o'clock, whenever we finished. And I would catch people that I was told, those are my people, on the television. So, I grew, and then I did some research in the archives, the National Archives, and there was, in 1976, there were 3 Negroes in West Auckland. I know 2 of them was me and my sister. I don't know who the other guy was, but, there was 3 of us. So I've always thought about it in those terms, not colour terms, but as identity terms. I've always thought about black as identity terms because that was the era that I grew up in.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of this convoluted sort of, you're only black if you look black. Yeah. Which I think is a complete misunderstanding of the history of that term and how it's being used. But I mean, different strokes for different folks. But I was wondering if it would be okay if you read this poem.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I created this poem. It started off as a creation because of an understanding of being called African-American. Yeah. Because people would say, "Oh, you're African-American." And at first, I didn't want to deny it because I didn't want to make it a negative. Yeah. I didn't want to put people down that want to call themselves that. That's up to them. Yeah. And like I say, if I was still living in America, I would probably consider myself African-American. Yeah, I probably would have went along with the crowd.
Yeah. If you've been there. Yeah.
But so I started developing this poem, but it was 2004 when I actually made it what it is today, because I used it in that storytelling thing that we actually took to London. We actually did it in London. We did it in Glastonbury. We've done it here in Wellington several times. Couple other places here in New Zealand. Yeah. It's called Tahairenga, the story of identity. This is called A Problem of Identity. I am of Africa, but not African. I was born in America, but I'm not American. There's no identity problem, only a problem of identity. My ancestors were both African slaves and natives of the New World. People stolen from their land and a people who had their land stolen from them. Never disconnected from one and not quite connected to the other. Of Africa, not African. Born in America, not American. There's no identity problem, only a problem of identity. America? My country? It was never meant to be. It even sounds strange and hollow to me, calling itself the land of the brave and the free. There's no identity problem, only a problem of identity. My identity is about who and what I identify with. I'm grandson to a Cherokee. Although I'm no longer young, I am still gifted and black. There's no identity problem, and there's no longer a problem of identity. I am a black Cherokee actor, poet, and storyteller.
Thank you, Tony. That was beautiful. I think right now we're going to go to our second song, and that is... Oh, hey, it's our guy. This is B Wise, a Nigerian-Australian artist from Southwest Sydney, and he's here to blow the airwaves with a track repping his Southwest Sydney origins. This is a song featuring another artist on the come up, I Am Solo, and we all know who that is, my oldest son, who is of Tongan and Tanzanian heritage. This is their song, Where You From? I think it goes really nicely with our Where We Ended Up.
Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves. Now they play us in the club. It's like, hey, nigga, where you from? I'm from Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves. Now they play us in the club. It's like, I've been moving in the background, made a little bang, so I'm never going back now. This ain't in your face, this a motivation track now. Remember I was a Johnny's kebabs, eating scraps now. Wait, real like Holyfield, take a meal, hopping on the kill, right before the deal. How you feel? Finna make a meal, 50 with the skill, get rich, all that trying, everybody know the drill. It's like, I'll be rolling right, yeah, hey, I'll be on the night, yeah, this liquor got me pimping Dolomite, yeah, see Oriental, baby, all the right, cause this is it, never counterfeit, always with the shits, take a flick, call that moment, baby, build it like a brick, we legit, stand up nigga, never been about the shits, never quit, kept on taking goals, so I never switch, yeah. Bust it, we gon' get it, yeah, bust it, we gon' throw it down, bust it, you don't fuck around, bust it, we gon' get it like, nigga, where you from? I'm from Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves, now they play us in the club. It's like, hey, nigga, where you from? I'm from Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves, now they play us in the club. It's like, this our definition, come up. This how where you from, we run up. This our finger on the button, what's the number? Shout out to the boys on the sideline, anyway. Shout out to the ladies, hold it down, bust it, babies. I think we made it, shit is crazy. If I had an opportunity, I had to take it. Amazing, live life in cages, now we on stages. Shout out to the ones before, but now we turn the pages. Bust it, we gon' get it, yeah. Bust it, we gon' throw it down. Bust it, you don't fuck around. Bust it, we gon' get it like, nigga, where you from? I'm from Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves, now they play us in the club. It's like, hey, nigga, where you from? I'm from Southwest Sydney, don't forget about the boys. I've been out here really rapping when they never showed us love. Now they hear us on the waves, now they play us in the club. It's like.
And you're back on the Blackhouse at 106.1 FM. I just got to do a quick shout out. Culture Embassy Band is going to be having a single release party at, where is it going to be? It's going to be at Moomba on Friday, February the 12th. And it's a single release party for Not In My Life. So that's going to be this Friday, the 12th at 2021. That's all the shout-outs I've got for this week. So we're going back to Tony. And I wanted to ask you, Tony, about your set-up baggage books.
Yeah. Yeah, my current partner now, we've been together just over 25 years. She's the one that got me into storytelling. She's a New Zealander, Pakeha, but she teaches Maori. But she's written several books, and originally we got publishers, and then they changed publishing, changed. And then different books they wouldn't publish. They just decided not to republish them after they sold out. So we put enough money together to self-publish. Now, we're not a publishing company. We don't publish other books. We've only published her books because nobody else would. But the word baggage comes from something where we created. The first year we met, she was doing storytelling and I was an actor. And she convinced me, well, she was also a poet. She's written quite a number of poets, and she's a teacher. She teaches Maori and things like that. So she does stories bilingual, Maori as well as English.
Yeah.
So she published a lot of her books. Like one of the first books was The Puppet Box in Maori as well as in English. They didn't want to publish that anymore, so we decided to republish that. Then we got to one of the books there. It's kind of like an adult book. It's called The Mother's Child, and it's illustrated by a wonderful artist that lives in the Wairarapa. Linda Tilliard's her name. My partner's name is Moira Wairama.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Moira.
Yeah.
Hi, Moira. Shout out, Moira.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm going to mention her name. I mean, but yeah, so we decided that, okay, we both were not well off, but we're not struggling. So we put the money together and created Baggage Books. First off, it was a Baggage co-op to create the theater we did. But Baggage came from when we first got together. I was turning 50.
Right.
Yeah, and I told her, and she was coming from a marriage for several years with the Maori, and they split up. She had to raise her children by herself. So I said, we come together with a lot of baggage from our previous life. So she created a poem from that, and from that poem, we developed the whole show. So our first theater piece was Baggage. And when you work in theater, because it's not a business, it's a co-op.
Yeah.
It was called Baggage Co-op. Quite often, whenever you put together a play for like that Bats Theater, you're a co-op. The group is a co-op.
Yeah.
That way, any money it makes, it's not like a business. So it's kind of a tax thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so we kept the word baggage because eventually what we did, because to get funding, you had to have a bank account from a trust. So we created Baggage Arch Charitable Trust, which is back to BACT. Right. And then when it came to the publishing of books, we decided, okay, we're still Baggage, but let's make it Baggage Books. Yeah. So Baggage Co-op was first, Baggage Arch Charitable Trust was second, Baggage Books was third. So it's a kind of a coming out of that. But we have self-published several books, like the Mother's Child. No one wanted to touch it. It wasn't a children's book, but it was illustrated. Yeah. But it's about the creativity in women. The child. I've always come across the artist in everybody is the child. That's the creator. That's the one that creates. Too often, as we grow older, we're told to crush that bit. So in the story, this mother, that's what she's done.
That's absolutely true, Tony. Yeah. That's exactly what happens. I hope all the young people out there listening, it's what happens. Yeah. You've got to nourish that, don't you?
Exactly. You nourish the child. And the book is illustrated by this beautiful artist, Linda Tilliard. And they wouldn't touch it. So we said, okay, boom, we'll do it ourselves. And so we've been self-publishing that one for a number of years as well.
Have you ever considered publishing anybody else?
Not really. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah?
A lot of work. Right. I mean, if I'm trying to be an actor or a poet or a storyteller, it's just like,
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the show. I think that we're going to have you come back.
I would love
sometime in the future.
I'd love to.
Probably in the near future. Because I want to get to the other part of this, your story, because there was so much that we could cover. There's so much there.
I'm supposed to be writing my stories.
Really?
Yeah.
Why don't you test out writing your story right here at the Blackhouse? Like you just download it. It would fill a lot of hours for us.
Okay.
That sounds great. Well, we're going to be going off. So.
Okay.
And that's us.
That program was brought to you by Wellington Access Radio. Get your voice heard.
Thanks New Zealand On Air for funding accessmedia.nz. .nz. 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 .nz.